What's up, y'all? I'm Zach, and we got Reliquary in the house today. What is up, dude?
Yo, man, how's it going? Thanks for having me, dude. Really
Yeah,
excited to
man.
be here. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. It's been a long time
Yeah.
since we've talked, so it'll be great to catch up with you. You have some great releases that you've been putting out,
Thank
so I'm
you.
super excited to dive into that as well. But just to start us off, just let everyone know who you are, how you got into music, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure, man. I don't know if we have enough time to talk about how I got to where I am today. It's been a many years long journey. But my name is Chris Orozco, DJ under the alias Reliquary, DJ and produce under the name Reliquary. Been making music probably now 8 years, I would say, pretty close to
Wow.
there. Yeah, give or take. Started DJing maybe a year or so after that. How I got started, yeah, I mean, I grew up. I think a lot of us kind of got started this way. Like, I grew up in more like suburban town. Not many people were listening to dance music. It's all like rock or country or hip hop. But I always really liked like synthy stuff, like in the '80s and '90s,
Yeah,
like like Nine Inch Nails or Depeche Mode. Just like wasn't really into those bands necessarily, but they'd have these sounds that were really captivating to me. And then I started getting more and more into just kind of like actually what it was a boss of mine kind of first really got me educated on like dance music genres. His name was Micah back when I worked at a pretzel shop, but he's
nice.
like, yeah, man, here's like Pendulum for drum and bass.
Yes.
Here's Paul Van Dyke for some trance. Like, he just gave me these like burned CDs back when we were trading burned CDs of all these like epic albums from like Paul Oakenfold, Tiesto, and like yeah, he really kind of got
That's
me set
across the
off on
board. You
the
got drum and bass trance, you got
yeah,
some
yeah.
like big room house in
Yeah,
there
he gave me a
too.
lot of like hard house stuff too, like back in the day. Like Sander Kleinenberg was one of the CDs I really liked. So like some cool stuff. I guess he wasn't really like hard house, but anyway, like more housey stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm really grateful for that relationship. We still stay in touch on occasion. But yeah, that kind of got me started. Then eventually another good friend of mine, he was like, hey man, you should start making this music. You're so like passionate about it, you like it. I was like, no way. Like, I never really been a musician, and this is about where that 8 year mark started. And he's like, no, like, I'll show you how to do it in Fruity Loops, we'll get started. And I just started getting really into it. I'm a big nerd, so like learning
Yeah.
about like envelopes and synthesizers and stuff, like I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole new world of like stuff to play around in and learn. So like,
It's actually really funny you say that
yeah.
because, like, after I did music for so long, I was like, oh my God, this is actually pretty nerdy. Like,
Yeah.
but
And
no, man, it's definitely fun to dive deep into like the intricacies of sound design and all the things you can do with effects and all that.
yeah,
Um,
it's an endless world, man.
It really is. And so you said you started out with Fruity Loops, but you're in Ableton now?
Yeah, yeah. I'm using Ableton mostly now. I mean, I like Fruity Loops a lot, but there's a couple key features that Ableton is just better at. I think it's a little bit better organized, a
Mm,
little bit easier to just kind of like stack things and bust things. There's one less element that's was annoying for me in Fruity Loops for like routing.
mm.
Automation was really frustrating in Fruity Loops for me. I mean, it wasn't that frustrating, but it's just slower. It took more like kind of manual hand holding than I feel like Ableton does. So took
Mm.
a while to get used to it. I probably spent like 6 months not really focused on music and just trying to get used to a new DAW.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I
So
think it
how
was
long were
worth it.
you in Fruity Loops for before you made the switch?
Probably like 3 years, maybe even 4. Long time.
Oh,
Yeah, and
wow.
even during that time, I was kind of in between both because I had like projects that I was working on in Fruity Loops, and I still know it pretty well. Not as fast as I used to be, but like I'm familiar with it. And it's gotten better since then. But I think so has Ableton. So I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The nice thing about Fruity Loops is it's cheap.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
what, like $200?
yeah, I think you can get the basic one for 100, and the nicer one comes with some synths and effects. But honestly, the synths, if you're doing a lot of us just use third-party stuff anyway,
Yeah.
for the most part. Like, I don't think I use Ableton's native synths at all, personally. Maybe some people do, but not to say that they're not good. It's just not what I'm used to.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what type of third-party plugins do you like using?
For me, I'm a huge fan of, let's see, I use Spire quite a bit lately. It's just a good kind of like starting point for sounds. There's some really good trance banks for it. Serum I like a lot, but I don't have as many banks for, so I don't use it as much. I'm actually a pretty big Native Instruments fanboy. So like my DJ setup is Native Instruments.
Oh,
I've
nice.
got their Machine A software and hardware, which is really cool. And now I've got like the big light up LED display complete keyboard, which is pretty cool to play on. So
Oh yeah.
um,
Does that make it easier for you to produce, or you use that specifically for shows and stuff?
yeah, no, it's definitely for production. I want to integrate like the drum machine into my shows, but
Hmm.
with trance in particular, you find that the songs are pretty saturated. So it's not like with house or techno where you can like pretty easily add a drum loop on top or like play synths on top, because these tracks
Mm.
are like full of synths
Yeah, yeah.
already for the most part. It's kind of like a big characteristic of trance and a lot of what I like about it. But yeah, I've done it a couple times, but to say that it added much to the performance would probably be a stretch. You know, it's hard to do effectually without like having all your own tracks, taking out parts that you just like perform live because that's what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to that point yet. Hopefully, I don't know if you've seen any of have you ever seen Giuseppe Ottaviani? His
I
like live
haven't.
setup stuff, dude, it's
No.
wild, man. Because he'll do that. He'll like have like an Ableton set going with his tracks, and then he's got these mixers for him, so you can like pull out the bass and then just start playing the bass arpeggio like on one of his keyboards that's up there, or he'll pull out the synth and start playing the big lead that happens. Like it's super cool. Yeah,
Wow.
really cool way to like bring like live to show, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. So you don't see very many DJs doing stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've taken a look into like DJing on live a little bit. Do you
Mhm.
know anything more about it? Because like I
Hmm.
I know you can like make two tracks and you can do like crossfader stuff, but like that's pretty much all I know
Yeah,
about it.
I don't know about doing live DJ sets. I've never done that, but produce DJ sets, or I'll do pretty much always in Ableton. I don't like for Mine and Ian's radio show. We do a radio show called Where's the Sunset every
Hmm.
month. Next episode is actually in just a few days, next
Oh,
Wednesday.
cool. Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah. So for that, we'll produce it in Ableton, and it's pretty basic. It's just like an EQ rack for low, mid, high, and then I don't know if you know in Ableton you can have like automation lanes for each thing. So we'll have like 4 default automation lanes for every track,
Wow.
and it'll be volume, high EQ, mid EQ, low EQ, and then you just kind of like just like you would on a mixer, adjust the knobs, and you can just do like this. The nice thing is like once you like got your track list laid out, you don't have to like rehearse it, practice it, record it, and then spice in any like edits where you make mistakes or you're trying to fix something or do something better.
Yeah.
So it's definitely quicker. But I've never done it for like a live show. I would imagine it's similar, without the like automated switches.
So you said you use that for Where is the Sunset?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So do you have to like adjust BPMs, or like what do you do for that?
Yeah, and this is one of the things that Ableton's a lot better at, in my opinion, than FL Studio. The setting like a beat grid for the tracks,
Hmm.
and then it kind of automatically warps it to whatever your beat grid is in Ableton.
Oh wow.
So it's a little bit tricky learning how to do it because it's not very intuitive. But once you
Yeah.
understand it, it's pretty straightforward and simple. But yeah, essentially you set a beat grid for every track, kind of like you would in like Rekordbox or Tracked or any like main DJ software. um, and then you can automate the BPM of your set as you go. So usually unless we're moving really far, we'll just kind of like lay the set out and then often decide afterwards, like where do we want to pull the BPM up or bring it down,
Mm.
unless it's like a huge like kind of upward push or something like that, then we'll start doing it periodically. But yeah, it's super simple, and you can just kind of like once you have it lined up and beat gridded and all the kicks matched, you can do whatever with the BPM automation. So it's pretty nice. It's pretty
Hell yeah.
nice. Yeah,
So real quick question,
yeah.
just kind of taking a couple steps back, but
Yeah.
you mentioned that your buddy showed you like a bunch of different genres.
Mhm.
What took you into the trance world, and what made you kind of decide that's what you wanted to do?
That's a good question. I mean, I think like a lot of people, when I first started getting into it, I thought a lot of like progressive house and like melodic house was also trance.
Yeah.
So I kind of just like stuck with the trance label as essentially being like what I like most, which is true to a degree. But honestly, when it comes to like proper trance or like real uplifting trance or what a lot of people think of as like true trance music, it's not really
Yeah.
my favorite style of music.
Hmm.
Um, it's cool, it's good, but it's not really like the kind of stuff I like to make. So I make what most people would probably consider progressive trance. It's kind of like a hybrid between like houseier styles and like real trance. But the what really I gravitate to are these like really pretty melodies, these kind of like emotional breakdowns. They're longer than like a typical house breakdown, and that's the kind of stuff that really kind of pulls me in, you know, or like a really like emotional or like pretty vocal, like that's I think those are the kind of main elements that really make trance to me, and
Yeah.
that's like that differentiate trance from house. Like house to me is more like percussion oriented, and that's not really like what I'm after or like looking for. So yeah, it's really all about those like really like cool big synths, like all the like emotion and energy behind it. Like I love like rolling bass lines that just have this kind of like drive and energy, and I feel like trance really epitomizes the energy that I want from dance music. It's not the best genre necessarily, but it's the best for me. And I think of all the genres I hear, it gets me the most excited, especially when I hear it in like a nightclub setting or a festival setting. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Just
yeah,
keeps you going, man.
yeah, exactly. It gets me amped.
So when you're producing progressive trance or just trance type music, do you start out with the synths, or since you said it was more like synth and like baseline
Mhm.
based,
Yeah,
what do you start out with, and what do
yeah.
you?
That's it's I usually I'll start with the bass groove.
Mm,
Um, I kind of want to start moving away from that or trying something else with it, because I find that then later I'll struggle with the real like meat of the track. Well, I wouldn't even say meat, like the real like theme of the tracks. Like, okay,
mm,
I've got this groove, I got this idea, like what is the theme? I think it would help to start with the theme, but it's also really difficult to get a really good groove. So for me, I kind of want to just get that done right away. So I'll
mm,
start with like kick, sub, and like mid basses. Just kind of like what is the like real meat and potatoes of this track? Like,
yeah.
all right, what is the drive like? What is the energy like? And then I'll kind of start building like groove and atmosphere around that with like other percussions or maybe some like one shot synths or stuff like that. Um, I'm like, okay, cool. So like now I've got like a vibe, and then I'll kind of use that to guide where I want to go from there. It's like, okay, what does this feel like? Like, what does this remind me of? I don't typically start a track with like a feeling in mind,
Mm,
but once I get to that point, I'm like, okay, yes, like this has like a longing feeling. Like it kind of reminds me of this, you know, kind of tough situation I was in where I felt that. And then I'll like usually pick a memory in particular and just kind of like elaborate on that and try and really like fill in the rest of the space with those ideas, which can be hard and a lot of times doesn't work out the way
yeah.
you expect it to.
Well,
But
that's really
yeah,
interesting. So you start with just kind of like the basics in a way, just kind of
yeah,
get that energy going, and then
mm,
from that, it will remind you of certain memories from your life,
yeah.
and then you'll kind of expand on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much how I'll do. And like, you know, a lot of it is experimenting and it's there's always this kind of like moment where you're like, okay, like this is an idea that I can take somewhere. And when you're
Hmm.
starting, it's hard to identify that moment, you know. It's like, okay, like this works. I'm just gonna keep throwing stuff on there, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but getting more selective about like what you're doing and when you do it, I think makes a big difference. And you know, I'm no expert by any means, but I think I've gotten better at like picking the ideas that I think I can really elaborate on or that I think really are relatable. Which honestly isn't the most important thing, but like it helps, right? If someone can understand what you're trying to convey. So
And that's a beautiful thing about music, is that everyone will have a different take on it. It's art, it's subjective. So
Yeah.
someone could feel one way about it that, is spot on with how you were feeling, or someone could be like, oh, this reminds me of this moment.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's a
People make it
beautiful
their
thing.
own, which is really, yeah, like you said, it's beautiful. They take it and they make their own special memories or attach it to their own situation or circumstances. And I don't know, it feels good to be a part of that. I think that's a big part of like how I got into it, right? It's like
Yeah.
all this music got so sentimental to me, and just like I kind of wanted to be a part of being able to share that kind of feelings with people,
Oh
even
yeah,
if it's
man.
not necessarily the feeling I had in mind.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I mean, music's a journey, dude. And
Mhm.
um especially when you're making it, like, you think you're going to start out with one thing and it could be something totally different.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing about it, is it each session that you work on is a journey in itself.
Mhm.
um is there any times where you're like working on music and you're just like, I'm just not getting anywhere, and like, when is a good
Oh yeah.
time for you, like, to be like, okay, scrap this idea or push through?
I wouldn't say I very often just scrap an idea. It does happen, and there's been a few that I push through, and I'm like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. That hasn't happened. Well, I don't know. I guess I do have a few just kind of like on the back burner that I want to come back to, and I think for me, that's kind of the best thing to do. Is like, all right, I'm stuck. I think I've got some good ideas. Let me just move on. Like that's kind of the best way to like push through. And sometimes I'll just start something completely new.
Mm,
But I generally don't start things without the idea of like trying to get it done.
yeah.
I may at some point come back and decide that these ideas just don't work together. But usually what happens is I'll come back and I'll say, okay, is this thing that doesn't work? Or these two things don't work together. I've got to pick one or change them so that they do work together.
Mm,
And I think that's kind of the best thing I've learned is to like step away. At first, when I started, I would just like single-mindedly, like doggedly work this track into the ground, and I would make good progress, like getting tracks done relative to a lot of my peers that were starting out. Um, but the quality was lower because I wasn't um, able to see that like kind of more objective view. And when I would get
mm.
feedback from people, I couldn't see it because all I could see is that same loop I've heard tens of thousands of times and never taken a break from, which sounds right. You
In
essentially
your
trick your
ears, yeah.
yeah, you trick your brain into like this is what the song sounds like, and you get attached to these songs that oftentimes aren't that good. And it still happens. Like it happens to all of us, right? I'm sure you're very
Oh
familiar with
yeah.
that
Oh
situation.
yeah. I'm like, dude, this thing hits so hard, and then I'm just
Yeah.
like, my friends are like, oh yeah, it's good, it's good.
It's I wish it was better, but like yeah, cool idea. And but yeah, and so I think that's kind of what I've been doing more of lately, but I still only have like a handful of projects, and I think I see a lot of people struggle with like just starting new ideas over and over again, and I hate that. Like I hate leaving all these like half done ideas out there. So for me, if I haven't looked at it in like a year, and or if I have and like haven't really gotten inspired by it, then it just kind of goes to the graveyard. Like
Yeah,
I just
man.
don't really come back to it. But a lot of times I'll come back and like, okay, I know where I want to go, at least for now, make some progress in the next like several weeks. And then if I need to sit on it again, and like it's an iterative process, man. I didn't think it would be like this when I was starting, where you're just like, you know, visit it, go away, visit it, go away.
Yeah.
You just kind of like watch these guys in tutorials just throw a track together and like, wow, that's done. Like,
Yep.
I don't know how they did that in the 30 minutes I was just watching, but
a
it doesn't work
hundred
like that for
percent.
me, man.
No, it's good. I was watching like the Dead Mouse masterclass actually,
Mhm.
and he was kind of talking about how he would, like, make an idea or something, and then it wasn't like working for the track, but instead of just ditching it completely, he would actually, like, let's say he had like a couple of chord progressions or whatever. He would actually, and you can do this in Ableton, which is great. You can take the MIDI and then you can just save it for later. So you can
Yeah,
just
that's a good
drag that.
idea.
And then, down the road, you, like, as you're, building your production skills and over years and years, you start to build a catalog of things that you've created. So maybe it may not, work at the time, but you can always come back to it later and be like, oh, this will be tight in this way now. And I see it in a new light.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good tip. I got to do more of that. Like just kind of like organizing ideas that I think are like mine,
yeah.
or that fit like kind of my vibe or style, and like really keeping them in one place. But I mean, I've done it before. One of the not my last track, but probably like yeah, my previous release, Forgotten, was a melody from one of those kind of graveyard tracks. I was like, oh yeah, like I was really struggling with the build. I was like, I have no idea what to do with this. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I made this really catchy melody that I liked a lot, but I'm not going to go back and finish that track most likely. So let me just bring it into here. And it worked out really, really well. So
That's cool. So you figured out the
that's what
build up.
happens. Yeah, exactly. That's the hardest part for me, man. Like the groove takes quite a bit of time getting that like first groove started. And then once I get to like the breakdown, I'm just like, you kind of have to like start writing a song all over again. Like, okay, like
Yeah.
what is really this song about? You know, you have to really make some decisions that are a lot of times tough. That's kind of where I'm stuck right now on another, another one I'm working on.
No,
Yeah.
man, it's all about finding ways to get over those hurdles, and you
Mm-hmm.
definitely seem like you're doing a great job with that.
Thanks, man.
And something I noticed, I want to talk about Voyager's Cry, because I
Cool.
just listened to it again a couple minutes ago, and it's a really great track, dude. I
Thanks,
love
dude.
the vocal elements. That's just like one of my things. I love vocal chops and just
Yeah.
kind of like
Dude, you do a great job
atmospheric.
with that stuff in your tracks too, man. I love what you've been doing with your work.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying, just trying to pump stuff out like you. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, tell me a little bit about like where you got some of those samples,
Mm-hmm.
how you kind of put it all together.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll find just like a vocal from like a sample pack or something. And if I can find one that's in key or close to key, I'll just pitch bend it. And that's where I get a lot of my kind of like vocal chop ideas. There are plenty like sample banks out there of like
Yeah,
effectual, like vocal choppy stuff, but it can be really difficult to kind of make that fit your track. Like they have their own kind of notes already, or
yeah,
they're
and
just not,
rhythm.
yeah, they're just not really interesting enough, or they're like too wild and crazy with the effects a lot of times. At least, especially in the trance packs, they have like all these crazy like ping pong delays and stuff. And sometimes you just need
Yeah,
something you can like play.
yeah,
So that's a good way to, that's a good place to go. That's usually where I come up with, and kind of like you're saying, like I'm just a huge fan of vocal chops anyway. Like that's one of my
yeah,
favorite parts of dance music in general, but I feel like trance uses them a lot too, especially progressive trance. You hear them a lot. So, but yeah, I'll just find something, cut it up, and then sometimes you may reverse it to give it a more like a different kind of character. So the ones in Voyager's Cry are reversed, and then yeah, you just have to play around with it. It helps a lot. I do a lot of like back to like the nerdy stuff, like analyzing what note is playing. Like I'm not that
mm,
musical of a person, right? Like I can't
yeah,
really play an instrument. I know my way around the keyboard after years of practice, like being around one, but it's not like I
yeah.
can play it. I've been trying to learn a little bit, but I'm not any good.
Same here,
But
man.
but yeah, so like I'll use like an analyzer to say, okay, what notes am I hitting? And then compare that to notes that are happening in the track. And then I may like take one little sample, pitch it up or down one or two steps, like just take the time and attention. It can be really tedious and seem like it's impossible, but like it's kind of one of those things that I feel like is worth putting the time into, because once you look back on it, you're like, yeah, like this is it, it helps make it unique and special rather than just dropping the same, like down pitched house sample that everybody's using for,
Yeah.
sounds like some man going like, oh yeah, or like whatever.
Hell yeah, dude. So
Yeah.
you said you use an analyzer. Is that like a third party plugin, or is that a stock plugin that you can
No,
get in
no. It's
Ableton?
so the one I use is a free one called Span.
Okay.
SPAN is by a company called Voxingo, and it just does a really good job kind of identifying peaks.
Mm,
So you can see where the fundamental frequency is, and then when you put the little like cursor over it,
yeah.
it shows you what note that is too at the like kind of like bottom corner. So you're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
So
that's super
that's,
cool.
yeah, so that's usually how I'll figure out like anything that's tonal, even like atmospheres, or if you have like a big like chorus
Yeah.
thing, it can be really hard to know whether or not it fits your track. And a lot of times you're like, I don't know. I used to try and do it by ear, but it turns out my ear is just not that good for that sort of thing, I guess. So then I started. A friend of mine turned me on to using a analyzer plugin like this, or you can also use like a guitar tuner plugin, like
Mm.
in
I think they have a
Ableton.
stock one. Yeah.
Yeah, Ableton has a stock one called Tuner, but it's not so good for stuff that's not like very clearly has like a fundamental, which a lot of this stuff won't if
It's
there's
kind
so
of
much like
like a
background.
rough idea of where it's at.
Yeah, and and it may be like slightly out of key or maybe in between notes, and you'll see it like jumping back and forth. So to see like
Yeah.
a spectrum analyzer, we can see where's the peak frequency or the fundamental frequency. Then that's usually how I'll do it. I think it helps. It helps a lot, and it helps you understand your music too, because then you can see it in context to all your other sounds. Like I'll put something like that on the master and see if there's any of these that are like sticking out too much, right? Like in general, you don't
Mm,
want like big peaks anything. So you may think it sounds fine, but to an ear that hasn't been listening to it all the time, if it's like a big peak in your master mix, then it's probably too loud.
mm.
You have to find some way to make it fit better typically. Yeah.
So you mix and master all your tracks, right?
I don't master all my tracks. I usually make an attempt at mastering.
Mhm.
But I do the mixing, usually with a lot of help from feedback and support from friends, like it's hard to be objective about this stuff without feedback, and
Yeah.
I guess it's impossible to be objective about it, but like to get some sense of what is true, you want the perspective of as many other people that you can trust to give you like good,
Good feedback. Yeah.
peer level feedback, um and then for mastering, like I'll usually try, like I'd like to get to the point where I can master my own tracks, but and the concepts are relatively simple, and like I get some of the ideas, but like that fine-tuned ear just is something that, I mean, people aren't lying when they say like you kind of get what you pay for with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
so I'll almost always end up outsourcing at least to another ear, but usually somebody that I pay. So like Mark Sherry, I've used quite a few times. He's very affordable, very quick, very good to work with, and an extremely great producer. Recently, I tried this guy Andy with A&P Studios,
Yeah.
and that's who mastered Voyager's Cry, and he did an
Oh, cool.
incredible job. A little pricey, but
It's
it's
worth
the
it.
best master. Yeah, it's the best master I've gotten back. When I compared it to like the one I had been doing, I'm like, oh yeah, like it's significantly better. Like, okay, we're gonna go with it. Cause that's what I'll try and do. I'll try my best and then compare it to a true master,
Mm.
and realize that I missed the mark and hopefully learn from it.
Yeah. No.
Where it was. Yeah. And but this one was just like, wow. Like, I don't know. He just did some magic with like the stereo field and everything just fit like really right. Like it's
It
wild.
feels it
Yeah.
feels super open, and I really do love that
Thanks, man.
track, man. It's so vibey, and
Thank
like
you.
it definitely takes you on a journey. And what I'm interested in is usually, and tell me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
trance tracks are usually around like 7 minutes, right?
A lot of times that's changing quite a lot. I mean, I think music in general, I mean, it used to be every track on a vinyl was like 7 minutes minimum because you needed a minute and a half to get it beat matched
Yeah.
with the other vinyl that you were playing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But with especially with the advent of streaming, like everything is way shorter right now. Like
Mm,
and radio mixes used to be like 4 or 5 minutes. Most of the labels expect the ones I've been turning in to be closer to ideally under 3. I haven't gotten one under 3 yet, but that's what people seem to expect, right? Like the
yeah.
attention span for the track is very low. Like it's just one piece of like a Spotify playlist is kind of like the general way they're used these days. For
Hmm.
DJs, I mean, for me at least, I still want an extended track that can really like set the vibe of a dance floor for quite a while. If you're like moving through tracks all the time, that's not the vibe I like at a nightclub. But
Yeah.
you go out to these festivals with DJs that are tossing out a new track every minute or 2 minutes, and
It's crazy.
crowd goes off, man. They like it. So, but it's
Yeah.
not really. I don't know. I kind of like to like really get in the mood of the track and like just dance for a bit. But that might be maybe I'm just too old school in that regard.
So do you have like a separate track that's, an extended version or
Mhm.
oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Well, no. It's the one that's. I think they're both on Spotify. There should be a radio edit and an extended mix. If you're on Beatport, I think we only release the extended mix because it should like the DJs aren't going to buy the radio edit. And I haven't looked at iTunes. I don't really use iTunes, so I'm not sure what's out on there. But I would think it's probably just well, it might be both because there's also Apple Music. Um, but yeah, and I think it's the radio edit that's getting most of the plays on my Spotify like hits right now, and that's just how people
Oh wow.
generally listen
So
to music. Yeah.
so you said radio hits?
The on the no, it's the radio edit is the one
Oh,
that's getting
radio
most of the
edit.
play. Yeah,
Oh,
it's getting
gotcha,
most of the
gotcha.
plays on the yeah. I've got a few supports though. It's been good. So it's only been a few days, so fingers crossed a few more come through. But
Hell yeah, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's been
I'm
good.
definitely supporting you for sure, dude.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Um, so we had Nick Hayes on here as well, and he's also a
Oh
part
hell
of
yeah.
Elliptical Sun. Great guy.
Hmm.
And he's actually been on your show too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Nick's awesome, man. I love his style and his vibe, and he's a funny guy. It's fun to hang out with.
Oh yeah, oh
But
yeah,
yeah, but I know he's a great producer, man. He's one of those guys that's like way too modest and doesn't give himself enough credit, man. But
100%.
yeah, he's really good.
He's a prodigy.
I wouldn't give him that much credit,
All
not to
right,
his
we
face at
won't.
least.
I know. Don't want to blow up his head too much. But yeah, man. So what was it like, getting onto Elliptical Sun? Like, what was the process for you?
That's actually a kind of funny story. I've been trying to get on Elliptical Sun for a long time. Like, I like the style of music they make. There aren't many labels that have like, aside from the huge ones like Armada, and all they
Mm-hmm.
are like Armada sub labels and like the Anjuna Beats label. There aren't many that have like a really broad exposure that are in kind of like the more like B tier labels.
Mm-hmm.
And Elliptical is probably the biggest one, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they've got some really cool music, lots of great artists. And they've just got like a pretty diverse portfolio of progressive trance too. Especially like the direction they've been going with a lot of stuff recently. So I've been wanting to get to work with them for a long time, but I'd never really made anything that was really quite their style. And I honestly didn't think Voyager's Cry really fit the bill either. It's the closest.
Really?
Yeah, but it I don't know, it just doesn't really have the same vibe as a lot of their music in my opinion. But Adrian Alexander, the chief A&R there, I think he's the head A&R there, I'm pretty sure he is. He was doing a kind of like feedback live stream. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll just tune in. Like, if nothing else, like, I'll get to say hi to Adrian, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, good
Fanboying a little
connection
bit over
there. Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
hopefully, at least say hi. If my track doesn't get shit on too hard. but,
You're just like,
but yeah,
no.
exactly. Like, all right, here's my track. Bye. No, but he gave it a listen. He had some good feedback, and he was like, "Yeah, man, like this is a really cool vibe. Like, hit me up afterwards, and this is definitely something I'd be interested in."
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, that's awesome." So I hit him up, and we went through a couple like feedback rounds, and ultimately they ended up wanting it, which was pretty crazy. Usually, I'll send them a demo in their like demo box,
Yeah.
and it'll just come back like, "Not for us." And that's really it,
Yeah, yeah.
so,
I
it worked
feel
out.
like that's and Nick and I on the other podcast episode we kind
Uh-huh.
of talked about that. Was like, work your way in a different sort of way instead of just sending your tracks to random labels and hoping one of
Mhm.
them lands.
Yeah.
Connect with people on a more personal level, kind of like you did on that live
Mhm.
stream. Like
It's important.
you're
Yeah.
interacting with their media that they're putting out. And I feel like that's just so much better of a way to like get recognition
Yeah.
and also to connect with people.
Yeah. I mean, the demo process is really built for like finding, you don't want to miss that prodigy that's interested in signing to your label.
Yeah.
So, like, but unless your music is like absolutely incredible, which if you're starting out or have been doing it for a long time, is most likely not the case. I wouldn't say that's the case for any of my music that I'm demoing either. Like, I've never seen a demo that their label was like, okay, signed.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's always like, okay, like, let us help you out. And I'm really appreciative for that. I wouldn't have any tracks out if it weren't for that, because I'm always having to go back and revisit it. But it's kind of like you said, because I've built a relationship with these people, or like over the years have been supportive of their posts and their music, they at least like kind of know who I am. I'm not just like some rando who's asking for help.
Yeah.
Which luckily the guys I work with are all like super friendly and would probably still help. But it's not the way to get the best help. You want to be more of a friend than just someone who needs help. So it's the same with DJ gigs too, man. Like, a lot of people don't get it. Like, you can't just send like a promo mix and think that you're going to get booked to
Be
play like
like,
the main
this
the
is
main
it.
club in the city.
First
Like, oh
mix.
wow,
Here I
this
go.
is the best DJ mix I've heard in my life. Like, that's not going to happen for like an event promoter for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
So let's jump to that a little bit. So
mhm.
for DJing and stuff, how can people connect in ways to start getting shows?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's kind of the same thing like you're saying though. It's just all about being present. You know, you if you want to be a part of the scene, you got to be a part of the scene, right? You can't
Yeah.
just show up and expect to get gigs and then people will know you that way. People need to kind of know you already, you know. And I'm not saying that you have to like, I don't know. I really hate seeing people just like networking for the sake of networking,
Hmm.
but there's plenty of it in the scene, and a lot of those people do a good job with it, and they get gigs. But I think the best way to do it is just be genuine, right? If you love this music, you love the crowd, you shouldn't have a problem being out at these shows, like
Yeah.
being a part of the environment, you know. Like if you're here just for fame, then of course all you want to do is be on that stage, you know,
Yeah.
like who doesn't want to be on that stage? But like it's usually the people who are really like dedicated to making these things better, be getting involved with the promotions, helping share the events and support the events. You know, they're the ones who typically get those opportunities because they're there, they're present. You know, they're the promoters know who they are, they know that they DJ, they probably already heard one of your mixes because they it's hard to find people like that are really like, genuinely passionate about it, not just that like, oh yeah, like I went to my first festival and now I want to be a DJ, you know. Like people who've been dedicated for a long time and really know what comes with that. So I don't know, that's kind of my experience. Obviously there's 100 different ways to do it, but that's kind of the way that I've done it, just being involved, trying to help people as much as I can. And yeah, I've worked with some friends to like start some of our own shows and things like that. So I don't
Mm.
know, it's just fun. I love
I,
it. I love the community, I love the people. So
Hell yeah. I
yeah.
think that's a great way to get started as well, is just make your own events. Like that's what
Hmm.
I did, man. Like it's
Yeah.
the easiest way.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's a different way. It's not easier, but
It'll
you're
get you in
able.
touch with the people you wouldn't have gotten in touch with in a very long time otherwise. So
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
What
Especially like, no,
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, like getting in touch with venue owners, like you have to bring value, right? And the fact you saying, "Hey, I want to DJ your show," is not adding value necessarily because there's 100 other people that want to do that. But say, "Hey, I want to throw a show in your place, and I can do a good job," and you can demonstrate that, you know.
Be like, I can
And
bring
people
this
don't,
many people and
yeah,
all
and it
that
doesn't
too.
have to be a blowout show because they're not all going to be, especially if they're starting out. But if you can at
Hmm.
least bring an earnest effort, you know, you start out doing a side room, you start out playing a bar, you know, throwing shows in a bar, and like that's how you start to get to know people. I mean, you know, but that's yeah, it's
Cool.
not that hard.
Yeah. No, no, man. It's
I mean,
not.
throwing the shows definitely is, but like getting to know the people and starting the conversation isn't that hard.
Yeah, man. All it takes is time and just, like you said, being a genuine person and just making those connections because you love what you do, not because of fame.
Yeah, if you're
And
trying to get rich, you're trying to get famous, you're going to get burnt out immediately
100%.
because it doesn't happen right away.
It's definitely true. I think people think getting into music, they're like, bam, it's going to be so quick and easy. Like this is going
Yeah.
to be easy money. But when you get into it, you start realizing, oh shit, like I looking back at tracks like 2 years ago and I'm like, God damn, I was horrible. Like it takes a
Yeah.
while to really perfect your craft, and working just a regular job and just putting as much time as you can into it, it takes a while for sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
um
definitely, man.
so tell me a little bit about your brand intentions. Like, where first off, like, where did you get your logo? It's very interesting. It kind of has. It's not like steampunk, but it's almost like I I can see it on like old like journal, like a mystic journal of
That's
some
funny.
sort.
It's
Where
that's
do you
kind of
get it?
why, yeah, that's why I like that font. It's so I found out the font I'm using is actually a bit of a design like faux pas. It's just it's a free font I found. But it turns out that like barbershops and like barbecue, or not barbershop, like tattoo parlors and like barbecue restaurants really like using this font out in the like
Oh,
suburbs or
really?
the sticks too. Yeah, I guess it just has this like cowboy like western kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Um, so like if you look around in like Marietta or anywhere like towards like the suburbs or like rural areas, you'll start recognizing it probably.
Oh,
but
cool.
yeah, but the reason why I picked it is it does have this kind of like weathered look, and that ties into the name Reliquary, which I probably didn't do myself any favors picking a name that no one can pronounce and probably hasn't been used
Hey,
since
same
like
here, bro. Same
500
here.
AC. Yeah, I'm sure.
What is a reliquary?
So a reliquary is an antiquated term for a container for holy relics. Well, I shouldn't say antiquated. The term
Huh.
is modern, but because reliquaries still exist, but no one really creates reliquaries anymore. There were
Mm.
these like, you should do a Google search for them sometimes. They're these like very elaborate containers or boxes or trinkets or talismans that would actually contain the remains or bones of saints, right? So they're like,
Huh.
they would sometimes have like a little window where you could see like some of the bones and stuff. So it's like these like yeah, these containers for holy relics essentially. And that's kind of where the idea
Wow.
came from. Yeah. So for me, with music being such a big part of who I am, and just kind of like what I want to do with my life, like I kind of think of myself from a DJ perspective as a container for these things that are very dear to me, very important to
Mm.
me, and they're kind of abstract, kind of like the idea of relics, right? Like
It's
it's
the
nothing
idea.
concrete, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like this. Yeah, there's just a container for these things that are very very dear to me, essentially. So that's where it came from, and that's kind of the idea I want to carry with it. I mean, one of my original ideas was to do kind of like a faceless DJ kind of thing with it. But I just didn't really have, I guess, the artistic vision to like kind of pull it off or like really make it happen getting started. I was more
Mm.
interested in like just starting to learn how to DJ and getting gigs, but maybe I can move to something more like that. But like, I don't really want to be like a face to the music as much as just kind of this more kind of material thing
Mm.
that kind of puts this out there for other people.
Yeah.
um but I don't know.
So what would that like faceless, would it be like a mask or like
No, I mean, the mask thing is like super done. I had kind of imagined a more like Wizard of Oz type thing, like
mm,
maybe somebody like behind like a veil or something, or um and I don't know. I got a lot of like very abstract ideas I don't really know how I would bring to fruition now, but it was kind of like the idea behind the brand at first. I mean, obviously now, I've kind of, it's not like I can like retreat into anonymity at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I do want to try and find a way to really tie that back more into what I'm doing. Obviously the idea and the brand is still there, but I'd like to really make it more of a kind of visible icon of what I'm
mm,
doing. But yeah, that's where the logo came from. It's just this kind of like new old feeling, I feel like, and I do play a lot of like older tracks that are really sentimental to me, or like I mash them up and try and help do that to like try and tie that into the brand more, kind of bringing the old and like nostalgic in with the new, and
I definitely
kind of,
get that. Yeah.
yeah, so I could bring a lot of the like, and I feel like in my music I use a lot of kind of like old school sounds when I can too. So
Mm.
um I don't know, that's kind of the general idea behind it. I guess I need a more like straightforward vision to really pull it
No,
together.
that's great, man. That's actually what I got from your logo. Like when I look at your logo, I see steampunk.
Cool.
Like,
Hell yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of like the old like Victorian type times
Hmm.
mixed with like futuristic mechanics and all that. I'm sure you know what steampunk is.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Seabook stuff is cool. I can
yeah,
see that.
so I definitely see that. And with going forward with Reliquary, what do you see like visually at your shows?
You mean like for like visual backdrops
Yeah,
or
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's something that I need to put more time and attention to. It's hard, man. I'm sure you know too, being an artist, like you're better about it than I am, like keeping I feel like a more uniform aesthetic and kind of like brand identity with the release covers you have and like your cover art. But I really just focus on the music mostly, and I spend a lot of time doing like promo and putting together assets because I also work as an A&R for Individual Identity, the label, so I stay busy with
Oh,
those
cool.
guys too. Yeah. Um, but yeah, It's tough, man. I don't really see myself so much as like a visual artist, unfortunately. I it's the kind of thing I'd need a lot of help from somebody with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way, man. It's
Yeah.
sometimes better to, utilize your talents and then delegate those
Yeah.
other jobs to people who
Yeah.
are pros at it. So,
Yeah. I mean, I've got like stuff that I would like to see, but like who do I talk to? Like how do I make it happen? Like what is the more concrete idea rather than this abstract, kind of like we just talked about,
yeah,
this kind of like
how to
place
make it
or
a reality.
thing. Yeah, like
Yeah.
how do you make it real? Because I guess that kind of reminds me, one of the main things I really thought about is Reliquary more of as a place, which kind of goes back to the
Mm.
anonymity thing. Like it's just kind of like a place you come for this kind of like feeling or idea. So I'd kind of had in mind like some sort of like building or location that's like constantly changing based on the mood or atmosphere. um Somewhat like, I don't know if you've seen any of like Seven Lions art with these like big kind of like monolithic
So,
like
dude, it's fucking
floating stuff.
awesome.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like a little
yeah.
bit more like coherent, like this kind of like thing, which
Mm.
is the Reliquary. And like, but it's a very dynamic thing, it's kind of what I had in mind. But
Is it kind of like a energy almost?
yeah, I mean, I'd imagine like a building, kind of back to my like more
Concrete.
nerdy
Yeah.
engineering technical side, but this like super complex, almost like Gundam like kind of like building, that's
Oh,
just
hell
like
yeah.
shape shifting and transforming and like has all these different kind of like pathways and secrets. It's like an infinite building, essentially, is kind of the idea. But like, how do you make that? Like how do you visualize that? What
Yeah.
does it
A
look
very
like?
good
So
3D designer.
yeah, exactly. Very, very expensive 3D designer. Exactly.
So we kind of talked about inspiration a little bit, but what do you do when you get like creative blocks? And then also like how do you find inspiration or what do you do to get inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I think inspiration is one of those things. I don't know. It might be a little bit just kind of like oversaid, but like it's kind of those things that if you don't do it, you don't find it.
Mm,
And I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody, I'm sure. But like I'm not feeling inspired, or I just don't want to work on music. But the only way I get inspired is to work on music, right? Like
mm,
sometimes I'll hear like an idea, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, but I'll just kind of take a mental note. It's not like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go like try and put that idea in my track.
yeah.
But then when I'm working on my track, try and think like, okay, what were these things I took a mental note of? Like, oh, there was the cool groove on this track. Let me go find it, bring it in as a reference, and see if I can like do something that follows that groove.
Mm.
Not the same sound, obviously. Not that I could make the same sound if I tried, but um, you know, excuse me,
Oh, we're
something like that. But like I think ultimately, yeah, like I'll get ideas like that sometimes, but typically it's just like, I mean, I have these tools, I have these kind of all these toys like my machine, my complete control, I've got now like a virus synthesizer. Like if you don't try and create, you won't be inspired, right? Like you're not just
mm.
gonna be like, oh, like I feel like making music, because you're gonna sit down there, you're gonna be like, well, what do I want to make? I don't
So
know.
so
So
it's
that's
almost like working a muscle or like going on a path or so like if you go on a
kind of, yeah.
hike and there's no path and you just start walking, it's going to be hard the first couple of times, but as you
Yeah, yeah.
keep going on that same path, it's going to get easier and easier.
Yeah, sure. Or eventually you'll find a path that you didn't know was there behind the brush. And that's,
Mm,
I don't know. I think that's kind of my approach. It's like, all right, like let's iterate. And sometimes you'll have an idea and like, okay, cool. You run with it and then you hit another dead end. And that's a lot of times where I'm like, all right, I got to step away and then come back at this fresh. And then you're like, because sometimes you can't see what your track is missing, or like what you might want to add. If you're just throwing stuff on there, like
yeah, just
then
for the hell of it.
yeah, just for the hell of it, like, all right, I gotta take a step away and see. And sometimes I'll just start something new, just to like remember what it's like to just like create and jam, right? Like I'll just open a project, throw some stuff together, just try and do some like wild ass stuff, kind of like you said, just like exercise. Usually I'm not taking any of that in there, but
Yeah.
just to create, right? Like I think that's where inspiration comes from. So it's kind of where it is. If I get like really stuck, I know a lot of people get stuck at like the very end of a project. Using a reference track is really helpful. So trying to find a few tracks with like that are in that style or in that genre. And if you're like multi-genre, then you need a lot of different tracks. But yeah, just finding like, okay, like how did this producer make this drop work, you know? But
Mm.
that's to me like the hardest part is finishing the track out. That last like 5 to 10% takes weeks.
Specifically with like composing or mixing?
Just the both, like the arrangement, mixing, like I don't know. To me, mixing, I kind of mix as I go. I
Yeah.
do also do like a last like mixing step. Like okay, like now like I'm done making the track unless someone asks me to add something or change something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just focusing on making it as clean and nice sounding as I can. So that's like a whole nother like few weeks. Like even just getting everything done, like do I have all my risers? Do I have all my fills? Do I like all my fills? Do I like all my risers? Like, do they fit right? Is there like nice atmosphere in the breakdown? Like, is the groove at this second drop really like what I'm going for? Like figuring all that stuff out. Like, can I add more detail to the drop so it's not just one lead sound or, you know, a stack of lead sounds playing? Like, I need some, like, how can I add more interaction to it? Like, the melody's done. I'm not going to
Yeah.
rewrite the melody, but like what can I add to like play with the melody to make it more interesting than just like okay da 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 da, like just playing through the end of the track, you know, like if you don't do those like little details, then it's just another trance track that's not that interesting. So
How do
like
you
getting those
choose
like final
those?
details,
How do you choose those details? What's
it's
the
tough, it's
process for that?
daunting. There isn't really a process. It's just like okay, like this lead is just a lead. It's just rolling. Like it's good. The melody's interesting, but like it gets boring after the first 4 or 8 bars because it's mostly more of the same. So you can like change the melody little bits so that like you tell different ideas as it moves,
Mm-hmm.
but you want to try and find ways to embellish it so it's not just like these. So a lot of times I'll like, okay, this is a big lead. It's going to be hard to add anything on top of it. So I'll just have something like maybe like a big stab that accentuates certain notes, right? So it's like
Mm.
da 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 da, and then like the big da da kind of like maybe like washes out or something, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But when that da da hits, you pull back the lead some, you know. So like you want these elements to really
Kind of
play with
like
each
come
other.
in and come out,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And that's the hard part of mixing, especially when you get to the end, you have all these like big elements, but like you got to be honest with yourself, right? Like, does anyone really want to just listen to your lead sound? Is it that interesting? Your lead?
Yeah.
Probably not, right? Like if you've got just 4 sounds playing, like I don't know, maybe it is, but like
It's a
you got to
minimal
find
track.
ways. Yeah, yeah, there you go. But even minimal, right? Like the way they make it work is like all these really subtle automations that are like
Exactly. Yeah.
making the sound change and expand and like contract and like move to the left a little bit, move to the right a little bit. Okay, like now it got quiet. Like so yeah, I mean, it's a more detail oriented style, but trance is not very, I mean, I'm not gonna say not detail oriented, but it's not a subtle style typically.
Yeah.
It's a very like in your face style. So if you want to make an impression, you need to add kind of like in your face ideas. Like one thing I'll do is like move to like a rolling bass line in the drop sometimes. Like so the whole rest of the time it was like this kind of like stabby or like kind of groovy bass line. And then like as you build, you got like a rolling bass line coming in, you know, and then it swaps back later on or something like that. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It
And
could
I'm
be
sure
anything, and that's the creative part, right? You can make whatever you want, but you got to
it's
make it
just
work.
choosing. Yeah, 100%. It's just knowing when those elements will work for
Hmm.
that specific time.
Yep.
Hell yeah, man. All right. So this is a fun question we like to ask, and it's tell us one thing that your fans don't know about you. It could be anything.
Don't know about me. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm a pretty open book. Everyone knows I'm a big nerd, giant dork. Most of my interesting things that people don't know about me are music related, so I don't know if that really helps in in the sense of
No
a
worries.
music contest, yeah,
It could.
context.
It would be anything. Could be outside of music.
Let's see. So I do also really like to rock climb. Me and my wife, we go rock climbing quite a bit.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty cool. I think she's really outdoorsy, so I'll go out with her a lot of times.
Do you like to boulder, or do you like doing rock climbing with like ropes and stuff?
Yeah, so I prefer doing it with ropes.
Yeah.
I'll go bouldering sometimes, but yeah, I think it's really satisfying to like climb up a big mountain and like look over the edge and like see kind of like the views and stuff. That's half the fun, I feel like. Whereas bouldering, you work really hard for like 10 feet and
And
then
you
you
just jump
just
down.
jump down. Yeah, exactly. Like, all
That's
right, I
cool.
did it. Yeah, so it's fun. I think it kind of goes back to problem solving and just kind of like dedication. So she climbs about as much as I work on music, if not more. So
Yeah.
she's super into it. She loves it.
Where
So
do you all climb?
she's got a gym locally she goes to. It's called Stone Summit. Huge gym, really nice climbing gym. Sometimes we'll go to like the Chattanooga area, like
Oh,
up in like
cool.
Tennessee. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
few really nice kind of cliff faces and areas around there. And then on occasion we'll go on like a destination trip and go camping somewhere like in Kentucky or um yeah, places like that. So
Hell yeah,
it's
man.
fun.
It's
Yeah,
so
man.
nice. It's so nice to get outdoors and just experience,
Yeah.
the nature and everything. And that can help with inspiration too, is just like
Yeah, that's true.
getting out of your room and just like experiencing something other than that same space you've been in
It's
for hours and hours.
something I haven't done in like 4 months, man. I've been in this room. I work here and then I turn off my work computer and I turn on my production computer and either like social media or play some video games or work on music. Yeah, so it's been good. That's one of the nice things. She kind of won in the pandemic because nightclubs and music stuff is not happening for a long time, but she's already able to go out to a lot of these parks and go climbing, and the climbing gym is open. So
Hell yeah.
lucky her.
Lucky her.
No, it's been good going with her though.
That's awesome, man.
Mhm.
So what do you do to like balance the two major things in music? You got the business side and the creative side. How do you
Oh,
balance that?
I mean, it's a labor of love, man. For me, I don't even really pay attention to the business side. Don't get completely ripped off or taken advantage of. Too many people when they start out like DJing, they play for nothing or they play for not enough or
Mm,
um and I guess if you're like first starting and you're just trying to get to know the promoters, and it's okay, but like don't let them take advantage of you forever. um but yeah, when it comes to like making and selling music, I don't know, man. Like I've only had a handful of releases, but making money is not really part of it. So
no, it's all
it's
good,
just
man.
it's just how it is. I mean, yeah, for me it's all labor of love, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten to that point as well, man. Like, in a way, like when I started out, obviously I want to do like the whole like touring thing and like all that. But then
Yeah.
after a while, I'm like, I just fucking love making music just to make
Yeah.
music. So I guess it's good just to know like what your goals are.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, like I kind of same thing. I had the idea is like, I'm playing some decent sized clubs and events. Like maybe I could start being more of a regional DJ, but it goes back to what you're saying. Like, do I really want that lifestyle of being a touring DJ? Not really, because I want to make music, right? Like I don't want to
Yeah,
be in a different city for like a whole week because I have a gig on Saturday. Like
yeah,
I just I want to make tracks and I don't want to do it in a hotel room when I don't get to see my like friends and my wife or go to like hang out with local people. So I don't know. Like I mean maybe someday like the business will be more important to me, but right now it's more about building my brand, building my own style. Um, sure, like I can make some money at gigs, but like it's not really the focus at all. I just want
mm,
to make better music. I want to kind of put myself in a position to share it with more people so that more friends can hear it. Um, but even still not I don't know. It's really important to me that I build all that stuff organically, so I don't want to take any shortcuts. You
mm.
know, I, I want to show people my music, but I don't want to really like force it on anyone either. So I don't know.
You don't want
Maybe
to
I'm not taking
DM
the
everyone and be like, "Yo, check out my
yeah,
track, bro."
yeah, exactly. I want to avoid stuff like that because I don't know. It bothers me when I get messages from people like that. I mean, I know it shouldn't. They're just trying to make the best of it. And I'm always glad to support friends, but like, I don't know. I just feel like that's not the way I want to get support and recognition. Maybe it's the only
Yeah.
way you get support and recognition. I don't know. But it's not really for me. I'd rather I'd rather make music for a small group of people than kind of like force it on a whole bunch of people that really aren't that interested, or giving me like a pity buy or something like that,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, man. No, I think that's really cool because not a lot of people in this industry like know where they want to go with things. And like there's nothing wrong with like just wanting to make music for fun and, you know, put it out there and have your friends enjoy it. Like as long as like one person can actually enjoy your track and
Yeah.
feel what you feel, that's awesome. But also, you know, if you want to be a person that wants to make it, fucking go for it too, you know? So
Yeah.
just know your priorities and yeah.
Yeah. I just know that like I've seen people that have tried really hard to make it and done pretty well, but like I just know the level of energy, time,
Mm,
money it takes to even just try and make it is well beyond what I'm willing to put in. I mean, I'm married, I've got a full-time job. Like I love making music. I love being like, and I love the satisfaction of reaching these milestones, but to me it's not important that it happens tomorrow or next month or next year. You
mm.
know, like
It's
the
just
next
knowing
mile.
that you'll make them.
Yeah, just knowing that I can do it is really satisfying, right? So like with Voyager's Cry, like getting signed to Elliptical Sun Recording, something I've been trying to do for 3 years, but I haven't been trying to like kill myself over doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm not working like 8 hours a night, like trying to hit up my friends for feedback every other day. Like, I mean, I could have done those things and probably accomplished it much, much sooner, but the cost would have been too high for me, you know? Like
Mm.
I don't want to sacrifice my relationships. I don't want to sacrifice my happiness. So I don't know. Maybe I'm taking the lazy man's approach to
No,
making
man, I
music,
love it. No,
but
no, I love it, man, because
yeah.
it really can be hard to
Yeah.
constantly push and push and push and just to know within yourself, like, hey, this is what I want to do and go through with it. That's great.
Thanks, man.
Hell yeah. This is another fun question for you. Who is an artist that you would love to work with, dead or alive?
So, I mean, my favorite trance artist is a DJ called Echo, or producer, I should
Oh
say.
yeah, dude, Echo's
Is
great.
also a DJ. Yeah, so Echo is like definitely my biggest inspiration. Um, he's I don't know, his style is just emotional and energetic and like atmospheric. It just has like all the like to me perfect elements of what I fell in love with trance about.
Mm,
So I would say it'd have to be him. Just like get into his brain, like work with him on like how he made some of his tracks. He's still making some music. I don't think he's making very much like really like trance style music, maybe more like progressive house, progressive trance style.
mm.
Supposedly he's working on another album, and we're friends on Facebook. Like we brought him here. One of the promotion teams I've worked with, we brought him here for a show like several years ago. So I actually got to meet him and open for him. So that was like a pretty big moment, but like haven't quite gotten myself to a point where I can like work with him by any means. Yeah, he's really really good. But one day we'll see. Maybe it kind of goes. It's kind of interesting though. Like I have gotten to work with some of the artists that I really look up to.
Who have you worked with?
Um, so I don't know if you know Pablo Artigas, but he's
Oh,
another. He's the guy who runs the label that I'm working with, Individual Identity. So like I don't know, it's kind of one of those like I can't believe this moments, right? Like so I'm working with him on his label. I'm one of the A&Rs on there. Like we're all talking and like just kind of like joking and friends all the time now. And you know you know I remixed one of his tracks now. Arcadia did a remix for him on Arcadia, and I don't know, just kind of like don't tell him I'm fanboying over him, but
I won't.
I don't know, it's just kind of one of those like man, I can't believe like I'm hanging like me and Pablo Artigas are like friends. He's not just a producer whose music I love, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy, but yeah, he's another like I feel like I have a very specific style of progressive trance that I like,
Mm.
and not many people make it really, and he's one of them. Echo was one of them. There's another guy like Breakfast Naden, like it's kind of this like narrow range. It's just kind of like dreamy, ethereal, and emotional sounds that I don't know, it's hard for me to describe. You'd have to look up these guys to,
No,
to
yeah.
get a feeling
We
of
just have to
what I'm
listen to your
talking about.
music and we
Yeah,
definitely get
there you
that
go.
for sure.
Yeah, you get a feel for my music hopefully. So I don't know that I'm doing any of them justice yet, but maybe one
No, you
day.
definitely are, man. Your
Yeah.
music's
Thanks,
great.
dude. Thank
Definitely
you.
hope I can get to the quality of work that you're doing right now.
Mhm.
So
You're
Um,
making great music already, dude.
thanks, man. Just trying, just trying in these streets.
Yeah.
So what is you've already given so much great advice. Actually, before we go on this question, you're talking about being an A&R, and
Hmm.
what is something like, what do you do as an A&R? And yeah, just start out with that. What do you do as like an A&R?
Yeah. So I didn't know this when I first started. Well, when I first started working on music, not when I first started being an A&R.
Yeah.
But A&R stands for artist and repertoire, for anybody who doesn't know. So it's one of the essentially like tastemakers for a label. So my job is to really kind of like push my peers and friends to submit demos to us, and then also review any demos that we have. So for us at Individual Identity, like a big part of us is to cultivate new talent. It's a big part
Hmm.
of our kind of mission statement. So like anytime we get a demo that we're even like remotely interested in, we're going to do our best to give like really detailed feedback to that person and like really trying to help grow them as an artist,
Mm.
and I can't think of anyone really just told us straight up no to so far that was in the right style, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're sending us a trap remix,
probably.
why are you wasting our time?
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
but if you like kind of know what we're doing and you get it, then we want to at least help. We might not sound we're not going to sign the track necessarily, but I think that's one thing I really love about working with this team. But yeah, in general, the job of the A&R is to um, secure promos, secure demos from other artists out there, and hopefully help us sign, the next talent for the label. So
Cool,
yeah,
man.
it's cool. It's fun, man.
So do you like, A&Rs don't really like go search for talent. The talent kind of comes to the A&Rs, and then you kind of sift through
Uh,
those.
a a good A&R does. Yeah, I mean, I'm always pushing the people that I know could do a good job to come to the label. Not necessarily like I'm not like going through my friends list like I'm going to send you a message like send us a demo,
Yeah,
but like if it comes up in conversation, I'll be like, hey man, like coming up. Speaking of, if you're working on any progressive trance tracks, just send them
yeah.
over, buddy. So
Hell yeah, dude. I
yeah,
got to jump back into it, man.
yeah.
It's been a while since I've done progressive, anything progressive
Yeah,
actually.
I've heard some of your stuff.
But
It's really cool. Not quite what we're like signing, but I'm just saying,
oh
I
yeah,
can tell your production level is there. So
thanks so much,
think
dude.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually funny because I actually I took progressive elements and kind
Yeah.
of transferred it into um different genres. So like
To hear it.
there's one song that I did. It was a trap song, but
Hmm.
it was a longer song and it was more progressive sounding, I guess,
Hmm.
just the way it was built, I guess.
Yeah, no,
But
you've always got some like nice big saw leads in there, like really cool vocal elements most of the time. Like it's cool stuff, man. I like it.
thanks so much, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll jump to that last question, and pretty much you've given great advice throughout this whole interview. But what
Nice.
is the one biggest piece of advice you would give to someone who's just starting out in the music industry?
Just starting out in the music industry. Um, that's tough. I'd say probably kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, like, I would say I don't want to say like don't set your sights too high, but like maybe curb your expectations,
Hmm.
because kind of like you said, like I really thought like in a couple of years I could start making like pretty good music, and maybe I did make pretty good music compared to what I was making, but I thought I would have like label ready music by a couple of years, and I definitely didn't. And I
Mm.
worked pretty hard at it. It's not like I wasn't trying. Definitely seek out, like I think the biggest thing is seeking out mentors and feedback. Find some people that can help you when you're first starting out. Put your own time into doing like your tutorials and stuff like that, but like once you like know your way around a DAW and like know how to write a melody and know like the basics of like music theory and stuff like that, which is a lot. It's a lot to ask,
Yeah.
but you got to be willing to do at least that much. Then once you're ready to start learning about like, okay, what is my arrangement missing? Like what is my mix down missing? Like I think having a really good peer network, and even hiring a mentor, like a
Yeah.
big one of the things that's really helped me make a leap in the last couple of years is having a good mentor, someone who's done it, who's been there, who can tell you like why your kick doesn't work or why your mid bass doesn't work or how they would make this mid bass line instead. It's not going to be free, but
Yeah.
it's going to give you that insight you need to take your tracks to that like next level, you know? So I think that's a big part of it. You know, it kind of goes back, like it's all community. It's all like knowing people. No one does this completely on their own, you know,
Yeah.
and doesn't matter how good you are or aren't, like, you're not gonna, like, I wouldn't have even taken that first step if it weren't for my friends saying, hey, you should make music. Cause I'm like, I don't know anything about music, but 8 years later, I know a little bit about music,
Hell
at
yeah.
least a little. So yeah, I guess that's not really one piece, but I think, yeah, like finding mentors, and feedback and peers you can trust that are already doing it. You know, I mean, most people getting started have at least somebody that they know or are friends with that's already doing it, most likely.
Mm.
So I
So
say, yeah,
where can you find a mentor, maybe someone that's not a peer? Like, where's a good place to look?
that's a good question. I just kind of stumbled on the one that I used. His name's Johnny Yono. Great
Hmm.
guy if you're looking into like trance or progressive trance. He's helped me tremendously and a really good rate. Um, So I think if you're part of that scene, that's how a lot of these guys make money, right? We were just talking about how like I'm not in this for the money necessarily, because the two ways you make money are teaching
Mm.
and like producing for people, either ghost producing or like mixing their tracks or mastering. So like you have like the production side where you're like either teaching or offering services, which there's okay money in. You're probably not necessarily going to get rich off of that. And then the other side is like DJ touring, right? So
Mm.
most of these guys, if they're not touring DJs, are trying to be a mentor or help
Yeah.
you learn. So you got to find the ones that are going to meet your kind of like price point, and kind of like that you can vibe with. So like, so for me, Johnny Yono worked really well. Great guy, like super helpful.
Where did you meet him?
Somebody recommended me to him. I can't even remember now. Yeah, it was my friend Obi. Another friend of mine who's been like this guy. He's been killing it lately. He's gotten really good in the past couple of years from
What's his
working with
name? Novi?
Obi
Oh,
Fernandez.
Obi. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Obi. I know Obi. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He's made a pretty big name for himself in the past couple of years, working really hard. He's one of those guys that just like once he wants to do something,
Nose to the
man, he just,
grindstone.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He's taking the opposite approach of me, that's for sure.
Hell
Nah,
yeah.
but yeah, so he recommended Johnny to me. So I gave him a shot and it's worked out really well. And I've tried a couple other artists. Um, a lot of, now that I kind of like have like a baseline of kind of getting to the level that I've been trying to, I can rely on my friends a little bit more, like the other guys in Individual Identity or other producers that I know. Um, but getting a mentor really, really helped a lot for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever done any mentoring yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. I love helping people starting out, man. Like, if you're just trying to like learn your way around it, I mean, I can teach more than that. Or like, if someone's stuck on something, I'll like jump into a session with them. Um, I don't know, just for my own satisfaction so far. If I just love to kind of like share the love of music. So anytime someone was like, "Hey, can you show me like Ableton?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Like, let's jump into it."
Yeah.
So
And
being the nerdy
it's
guy
kind
I
of
am, I
fun too, because
yeah,
you kind of you kind of figure out like, oh, I actually know more than I thought I did,
yeah,
or
exactly.
or hey, I'm actually teaching myself things that I didn't know, and
Yeah.
it's really cool
Or
experience.
things that, questions I never even thought to ask. Like, what does this thing do? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just ignore it. So like maybe I should find out what this thing does. Or why do I do this? Like, someone just taught me to do it. I guess I should learn like what the why is behind it so I can teach you about it.
Hell yeah.
But no, it's just fun. Like, and I love seeing that kind of like excitement of someone learning something new, or
Mm,
like when that thing clicks, like, oh yeah, like this is cool. Or like when you make something like cool together, kind of like when you collaborate with a friend, right? Like when we
yeah.
worked on that track that one time, just like that, just those just like aha moments are just fun, even if nothing
Yeah.
comes out of it, man. It's just nice.
And that's one thing too. When we worked on that track together, that brought a whole new experience to me because I was very um I was very particular, and I still do this with my music, but I'm very particular on having everything synced and like everything perfect and all that. And
Hmm.
you taught me to kind of be a little bit more relaxed and be like, hey, when you're playing a melody, it doesn't have to be like in sync. Like you want it to kind of
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like this flow and like this morphing type of energy in a way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Everything, the more human you can make it feel it without it sounding like it's poorly made or poorly performed, right? Like that's kind of one of the challenges of being a dance music producer is you want this music to sound real, but you're
Hmm.
making it with a bunch of zeros and ones on your computer, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like a paradox almost. So, and that's half of what I've been learning with like mixing, right? I make my tracks, they sound very like dull and stale. I have to go back and add all of these like analog emulating sounds like saturation and distortion to make them feel
Yeah.
more natural and real. I have to add reverb because we're not playing it in a room.
Yeah.
It's just a sound with nothing, like it's completely unnatural. It's like playing in outer space or something. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
so you have to like spend a lot of work actually making it feel realistic,
Mm.
even though it's not real, right? Like there is no actual space that you recorded the synthesizer in. It could be, but that's, I'm not doing that. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe, sorry, I'm not going to take my synthesizer to like a studio and like play it out of some speakers and
Or just like go to like a big
bring a
park or
mic.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, or a big parker. Yeah, I mean,
You're
and that
like,
would
I
be
need
one
my
approach to
reverb
like
to
add
be
something new.
huge.
Yeah, with the outdoor reverb.
Well,
But
awesome,
yeah,
man. Um, Thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure. Before we
yeah,
jump into your song Voyager's Cry, drop your Instagram, Facebook handle so people can give you a follow and see what you're doing.
yeah, sure, man. So I'm Instagram and Twitter, Reliquary_music, Facebook, Reliquary Music, no space, I believe. Let me check that real quick, actually, before I commit to that. So then it is Facebook is Reliquary No Space Music. Yes. So just Reliquary Music. SoundCloud, Reliquary Dash Music. Spotify, you can find me as well. Just Reliquary. Look me up. Um, so yeah, really glad I could come, man. Thanks for having
Awesome,
me.
man.
It's a
Yeah,
great time.
thank you so much, dude. And we're gonna drop your song Voyager's Cry right now. Thanks
Oh
again,
yeah.
dude. And
Yeah, of
have a
course.
wonderful night.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, enjoy. Thanks again, dude.
Yeah, man. Peace.
Have a good one.